Hi, welcome to the Indie Wine Podcast. My name is Matt Wood, and this is episode 104. Today we're discussing Woodside and the Portola Valley of the Santa Cruz Mountains. I'm joined by Nathan Kandler of Thomas Fogarty Winery, Bud and Anne-Marie Hoffacker of Portola Hills Vineyard and Redmond Winery, and Kat Dykeman and Ron Karpovich of Dome Vineyards. Both of the vineyards for those projects sit just below the Fogarty Winery. They also each work closely with Nathan to produce their Pinot Noirs. I'll give a quick rundown of the history of the area as a grape and wine producing region before we hop into the episode. But first I want to make sure you knew about the Arable series that the Future Collective has produced. The first 4 episodes are out now. They're directed by Aaron Brown of Dose Bar, where each panel was held. The series is moderated by Elaine Chacon Brown, and the conversations explore the intersection of local food and wine production, employers and farm workers, housing affordability, and food security in Sonoma Valley. With topics like land, labor, community, and advocacy, if you like this podcast, you'll like the Arable series. Full disclosure, I helped Aaron with some audio stuff on it, but other than that, I'm just a fan of what they're doing, and the panels are awesome. Some past podcast guests or panelists even. I'll play a short trailer, but you can find out more at thefuturecollective.org/arable.
This new effort, the Future Collective, bringing people together to share insight to build future leaders, right? We started by talking about elders. Elders are not just older. Elders are people that bring their unique insight to share in the community to help it move forward. That's what leadership is. Shared movement forward. Not singular, but as a community. And so the Future Collective ultimately is about helping create future elders, leaders in the community. And you have all been welcomed into that process.
Woodside and the Portola Valley have a long and important history of wine growing in California. There's never been a huge amount of wine made here, but the quality has been almost universally high. Arpad Rossi planted his first California vineyard in the nearby Crystal Springs area in the 1850s. Finding it too cold, he moved to Sonoma. Vineyards large and small began dotting the area. The Capella Winery, Billings and Sickert, Louis Alschel, and others. Billings and Sickle in particular had around 200 acres of vines and functioned as a bulk producer for the Ben Lomond Wine Company. By 1890, there were 7 wineries and about 800 planted acres of grapes. Edgar Preston was the largest grower by now, with 80 acres of vines and a 175,000-gallon winery. Smaller, but even more important, was Emmett Rixford and his 40-acre La Cuesta vineyard. The land was purchased in 1883 and planted to Cabernet with cuttings from Chateau Margaux, his favorite wine. Rixford, of course, also wrote The Wine Press and the Cellar in 1887. One of the earliest wine books in California, and one that still has a soft spot and is consulted by winemakers today. We'll get into his life in another episode. There were others like E.F. Preston on the road named after him now, and John Hooper growing Zin and Cab nearby. Phylloxera and Prohibition would mostly pause the industry here for almost 50 years. Starting in the 1960s, the Woodside area experienced a revival with Bob Mullen and Woodside Vineyards producing wines from a section of the La Cuesta vineyard, as well as Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and more. He started drinking wine when a friend told him, "You're a Californian now. You'll drink wine." Dwayne Cronin, who we discussed in the episode, made small amounts of world-class wines at a property that sits right between Dome and Portola Hills and still contains a few remaining vines. His Cabernet cuttings came from Camus and the Chardonnay from Ridge. And of course, Thomas Fogarty Winery, where we're sitting now, was started in 1978. High up on Skyline to make world-class Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, along with some other varietals. It's had the rare situation of only 2 winemakers over its nearly 50-year history, with Nathan taking over from founding winemaker Michael Martella. Reminder that I have a Patreon at patreon.com/IndieWinePodcast. A link is in the show notes also. If you're enjoying the podcast, any amount to help me keep telling wine stories ad-free and available for everyone is appreciated. It's all run independently, much like the producers I talk with. Telling a friend or sharing on social media are great ways to help out too. Here we go. So lots of wine. So, well, we can start maybe since we have so many voices here. Maybe we could just kind of go around the table and everybody could introduce themselves and maybe how everyone kind of ended up here in Woodside and the Portola Valley making wine and farming.
Yeah. Who wants to go first? You're at the head of the table.
Yeah. My name is Nathan Kandler. I'm the general manager and wine grower at Thomas Fogarty Winery. I came here originally, I think in December of 2003 or January of 2000 before I had an internship scheduled in Australia. I went to that internship, spent most of the money I had to my name traveling and needed a job to come back to, and was lucky enough that Michael Martella, who was the winemaker at Fogarty at the time, offered me a job. So when I came back in July of 2004, I immediately started camped in Portola Redwoods for a few weeks because I didn't have a place to live. And then I moved to San Francisco and I've been here ever since.
Bud Hoffacker lived in Woodside from 1972. And then about 21 years ago, we moved in the foothills here where we have the vineyard in Woodside. And I grew up in Palo Alto. My grandfather is from Palo Alto. And that's it.
Anne-Marie Redmond, and I'm Bud's wife. I moved to this country in 1982 and moved to Woodside California in 1995. So Bud and I moved up the hill. We saw the house and just fell in love with it and bought it within 3 days. This was in 2004. So it was about 5 or 6 years later, Bud decided to take out all the poison oak and put in a vineyard.
No easy feat.
No, we had someone help us with that one. But yeah, we tore out poison oak, which was all over the property, and started a vineyard. And that was in 2008. And
All right.
moved from then. Yeah.
And I'm Kat Dykeman, and along with Ron, own Dome Vineyards. And we moved from London about 6 years ago during the pandemic. And we came into winemaking really only after meeting Bud and Anne-Marie. We moved here after living in London under cloudy skies, and we're really excited about opening up an observatory. And so we were looking for kind of a place with a lot of sky. And what's good for land with a lot of sky is it also is good for grapes and hillsides. So
Yeah, we got lucky to find a place in the same way. We saw a house that we really liked and put it in. And in the US, you do this so quickly. Like, saw it on Sunday, had owned it by Tuesday night, which is crazy. And then realized we had extra land and extra property to be able to do so. Having I lived in cities for 30 years, never had a backyard, never had a front yard in that whole time. And then suddenly moved to, 5 acres in Woodside and had the opportunity after speaking to Bud about the idea of like, why would you put a vineyard in? And then getting an explanation of like, this is a really good idea. We should do this. And having the property to do so, we set about in 2022.
Yeah. Have a little London-ish dreariness outside right now. Very great.
It's getting the true Santa Cruz Mountains experience.
Yeah. Nathan, would you want to dip into a little bit of the kind of the history of wine growing in this area? This goes back pretty far. Interesting history.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's not as I don't think it's quite as well known as some of the other parts of California, but it does. It goes back incredibly far and very prestigious history, I would say. And I think maybe because this area has changed so much probably over the years that sometimes it's kind of lost to time. But when I first came to Fogarty, Fogarty began in 1981. And I kind of think that's sort of like the The second, that was right around the time that the Santa Cruz Mountains AVA was established. And so there's a lot of, I look at the second wave of the Santa Cruz Mountains. I guess, it's past Ridge and David Bruce and sort of that era, kind of the 60s, 70s. And there's like a little bit of newfound enthusiasm. But, for me, when I began to read and learn a little bit about the area, the fact that a gentleman named Emmett Rixford planted a vineyard called La Cuesta, basically right in the town of Woodside, right between kind of Roberts Market and 280, in the late 1800s. And this wine and vineyard become world famous, essentially. He writes really kind of the first seminal text about winemaking and grape growing in California. Just fascinating stuff, because the history of other well-known vineyards in other parts of California, like To Kalon, are like universal amongst kind of wine geeks. But it's kind of funny that this little vineyard right in our backyard is almost unknown by a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. But I guess, and Anne-Marie, what made you want to put some vines in the ground and start farming them?
Mm-hmm. Well, we both loved Pinot. It's our favorite wine from when we met. And we loved Sonoma. And we knew and drank all the best brands and all the best wines, and got to know a little bit about what you look for in Pinot Noir. And then as we started to grow, we are now quite interested in Paso Robles, because they're doing some beautiful blends in that area. Mm-hmm. So it was really the Pinot grape that attracted us. As soon as it wasn't long after we bought the property, it was really a great property for, it's east to south facing, so it gets good exposure all day, all of the vineyard. And right at the bottom of our property line is where Dwayne Cronin was, one of a very well-known winemaker in Woodside. And he was growing Pinot and a little bit of Cab and Zin at his place. And he made the wine right at his house, in his basement, in his cave. And that was our neighbor. And I met Dwayne, and I really found him as a very interesting, right between where Ron's vineyard and our vineyard is, where Dwayne's located.
Okay.
And his Pinot, when he finally died, and it was that he sold all the Pinot, K&L sold it. Some of those Pinots were 20, 25 years old. Mm. And to this day, we can't believe how some of the Pinots in the Santa Cruz appellation do age incredibly well. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people don't, it's kind of the hidden part of the Santa Cruz appellation, is I think how the wines really age the varietal of Pinot. And so it was very easy to make the transition to know what we're going to plant. Mm-hmm. So when we started, so the next question is, what clones did we want to do? So we picked 3 clones. One is Pommard. And then we picked 2 Dijon, which is 115 and 828. And we did the 115 because of the bright fruit, the red fruit, and we did the Pommard and the 828 because of the dark fruit. And those really come together, are really nice, and we've been really happy with that choice. So starting a vineyard is, you got to really commit your life to being a farmer. And and the more you learn, you find out it's the more you don't know. And that is so much the truth. And because every experience, every year is a different experience, and you're going to treat that experience a little differently than the last year. And so I think being a farmer, if you're not a farmer, I wouldn't ever think of getting into the wine business, because you have to love the outdoors, and you have to love all the challenges that you're going to get.
Yeah. And
if you can do that, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to make good wine too, because you care about the berries. And I spend probably 3 to 4 months a year in the vineyard, and it's a lot of work, and and it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of disappointment sometimes too.
I can't tell you the number of times he comes in and is just ready to tear his hair out and just talk about the mildew that's out there, or the the bees or wasps going after it. It's just one of those crazy times.
When
Yeah.
when
That's part of the learning process. I think, we've got by a lot of the things at the beginning,
Yeah.
and we're managing those pretty well now the last 8 years, because we've been doing it for about,
18 years now.
18 years. So you do learn those things, but as you begin, you're gonna make a lot of mistakes because you're not big enough to get outside consultants, and so you have to learn it. And another person really helped me was Rick Berg. He was a wine manager up at Ridge Winery, and I watched him prune for 3 years before I even touched a pruner, because I wanted to understand what he was doing. But that's what got me into wine, is going back to what you were saying a little earlier, is Ridge Wine. When I was out of high school, I had lunch up there, and I never turned my back on another glass of wine after being up there.
It's funny you mentioned that, because for us, we didn't get into, like, the goal wasn't to do farming. It was actually to sit around and drink wine, and it is a lot more farming than you expect, and I'm very much enjoying that side of it. But like, I came into this from like wine investing. So we lived in London.
Oh.
We lived or walking distance to Berry Brothers, which is the most amazing place. If you're ever in London, get yourself to St. James's, go to Berry Brothers. It's a wine merchant from 1668. It's the wine merchant to the Queen, but they were also a negociant. So they had access to the Enprimor Burgundies and Bordeaux's. And through them, I started drinking wine there and investing in their process and getting that access. So it was only ever wine drinking. And to me, it was always always Bordeaux. And then we moved here, speaking to Bud, he's like, this is what you have to do. It's all about Pinot Noir in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And subsequent to 2022, drunk nothing but Pinot Noir for 4 straight years to get understanding, knowing how to go about the steps. We took a slightly different attitude towards it. Like, I started pruning day one, like going and trying to learn about this, try to work it out, try to figure out how to do it. And you can find a lot of resources online to learn this stuff, but it's so difficult. There's so many choices, and we're just now seeing the fruits of our very first round of this, and you can't figure out whether you've made a mistake for 4 years down the road to make an adjustment, because you're already so far down the path. It's so much fun that way.
Mm-hmm. See Nathan nodding.
The delayed feedback of this industry is it's different than a lot of.
The barrels are the ones to me that are the most, like, we had to buy barrels, and you're in California. It's easy to find places. Bud gave me the name of Palo. I called Palo. Palo's like, here's the 7-page list of different barrels you can get. I'm like, well, how do I know what it's going to taste like? Or anything like that? He's like, well, these are the ones I recommend. And in 4 years, you'll be able to figure it out. And then 4 years after that, you can make an adjustment, because you're just tasting it today going, what are you going to do next? It's so difficult, that kind of stuff of how do you guys go about this?
We do have the luxury of having been around for a little while.
Yeah.
Which helps. All these things kind of continue to, the wine business is very challenging to think about in the short term, to learn and to be successful. It really is not a business that short term. If you're looking for something to repay, whether it's financially or emotionally, short term in the wine business can be a challenge. So if you have that long term, you're constantly learning, like Bud was saying, in the vineyard every year, you no matter how many years you farm, you're probably going to see something you haven't seen in either ever or a long time. So you're sort of developing your personal canon about how to farm, how to make wine. It's almost like you're developing your own religion about what you do, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not easy, because there are infinite choices. And I think everyone, who's successful in the wine business sort of comes up with their own way to deal with things, whether they are constantly evolving or whether they sort of figure out kind of their North Star and just follow that. So I don't know that there's one way to do it, but
What way have you kind of embraced?
Well, I mean, back to Ron, to your point about barrels, when I was a young winemaker, barrels were a big deal and people talked about using barrels as like a spice. And there was a lot of this barrel for that. And we kind of did a little bit of a shotgun approach to that at that time. And I kind of found myself thinking about barrels more than I was thinking about the vineyard. And that was like a revelation for me. It's like, it almost doesn't matter, not doesn't matter, but I'm losing sight of what's really important here. So I've kind of found one Cooper whose barrels I like for our Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And so simplified it rather than making it more difficult. And it really allowed me to focus on the vineyards. How are we farming? What are we doing for the soil, for vine health? How can we put effort in during the growing season so when the fruit shows up at the winery, my job's a lot easier, essentially.
And one thing about barrels, Ron, is when we first started, we were getting medium toast barrels. Now we get low toast, we get tightly grained, because we're starting to believe that you don't really want the barrel to have any influence on the grapes in there. So the barrel has, I agree, Nathan, is a less important thing than what I originally thought when I started.
And it's interesting you say that, because to me, I think like Bordeaux, and I want more oak and go to a higher toast than a lower toast. And it's just how you have palates and different ways of looking at, vineyards that are very close to each other, but these are the choices you can make to go in different directions. Some of our choices were also delivering by get less on the list. And one of the starting points of getting less on the list, which ones were not going to get hit by tariffs because they were already here. That was hey, by the way, these 4 barrels here are pre-tariff. So you can save some money if you choose one of these. And that came into play as well.
Well, I see all the barrels that you guys buy, and you guys aren't skimping out. So.
We don't have to buy very many, though. We're not doing as many as you are, and guys, you can be a little more selective. Yeah.
How do the two vineyards differ from each other, either in sort of how they're planted, I guess either rootstocks, clonally, just exposures, and how's that kind of contributing to the final wines?
Well, I think one thing both our vineyards is a little different than up here at Fogarty's, is we're on a little different material. We're very close. So we're on clay with a base rock of sandstone. And one thing about the soil is I'm really starting to get the flavors of the minerals and understanding when I taste the grape, when I drink the wine, I really can taste the minerals of the soil. And we're fortunate that our sandstone is between 2 feet and about 6 feet deep. So, and when you can tell when a vine hits the stone, because the ones that don't hit the stone, they might need the first 3 or 4 years a little water. And the ones that hit the stone, they don't need water.
Okay. And
so we just put a new area in that hit the stone in about 3 feet. And after 2 years, I wasn't even watering them. And then another thing is you can taste when the roots are into the stones, because the roots will go 20 feet. And once they hit that rock, you're going to pick up the flavors of the wine, of the minerals. You can tell that transition when it's just growing in the clay. And the clay is good for your tannins. And Pinot doesn't have a lot of tannins, but it gives a good structure of that by having that. So there are benefits to clay. And as long as you don't lock out a lot of the important, the phosphate and the potassium and all the good and calcium, if it's not locked out, and clay is known to lock out certain minerals, if you can manage your soil properly, clay is very rich and produces, for us, it's very good for fruit forward wine. So the difference in our vineyards are, I think, very, very similar. In the clones, we use, I went over the 3 clones Ron has, I think,
we have
very
2 of the
similar.
3. Yeah. So we have the Pomard and the 115, and then we got 777 as an addition last year, solely because it was available at the nursery in the small amount that we needed, and we had to deviate somewhat from what you guys are doing in the process. But we took a little bit of an attitude of, when you're new to this, like, there's nothing worse than making a bad wine. Like you can have a lot of bad wine if you don't do this correctly. And then that's a really bad investment. So we have an example of a vineyard nearby that's similar that works well. And we like, sitting here drinking your wine and it tastes fantastic. Can we be similar? So we talk about, what are you guys doing? What do we learn until we learn? So then you can start to deviate to say, okay, well, now I know. I have no idea what the minerals taste like in our vineyard yet. We're still there early in the day. I assume that took you a couple of years before you got to that point. And I think we'll kind of follow that track that 4 or 5 years down the road, you start to make it your own and understanding how to do it. Right now, it's just trying to get grapes produced in a way that you can make some wine out of it, Nathan.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is really the partnership that we have with Nathan.
Yeah.
And this is, it's a custom crush relationship. And so we're responsible to do the best we can in as a farmer. And then Nathan, it's nice that it's only 10 minutes away, so we can move our grapes and we can move them the day we harvest, the day that we want to harvest. And, we have about 3.5 tons of grapes, so we can do it in one day and get it up to Nathan. Mm-hmm. So without that partnership, I'll guarantee you it takes all elements, and all elements have to work. And I can't tell you how helpful Nathan's been.
And we're in the same boat. They're like, we're not making the wine. You're making the wine. We have a selection of decisions, which is very small. And we're producing a wine that way. I would love to learn it over time. And, when are you doing certain things and why are you doing certain things? But right now that's secondary to the farming side of things. We need to
That's
get
all top secret.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not going to get any of it. It's like we need to, and we won't tell you how we got our grapes so good to get in the process, right? But it's our job to get the grapes to Nathan to then produce the wine, and you have to work together on that side. You want to learn these things over time. You want to go through the process, but like you've got years of experience doing this, like letting you make those decisions, and until the point where you're like, hey, do you want to do A or B? I think we had a conversation about the fact that like, I would love to have Bordeaux. Okay. Like that's the direction, even though we're making Pinot Noir, we're thinking old world, that kind of thing. That's the direction we'd like to go. You're kind of thinking fruit forward, lighter in the process. And there's differences there. And you must do something with that information in the process. Yeah. Hopefully.
Well, I think one thing about Nathan is, he, Ron, we're using the same type of clones, same area. Our wines are going to be completely different because we like a certain way. We like a certain style. And Nathan doesn't try to do it just Nathan's way. He allows us the flexibility to do our wine and make decisions on those parts. And then once it's here, Nathan takes care of it. So, that's very personal. And in the custom crush business, a lot of times you don't have that flexibility. And Nathan really is great on that and has the total support of Tommy Fogarty. And there's a lot of history here. And it's real. That's very important to us.
And we may have abused that the first year as well, where we turned around and said, our first round of Pinot, we had a barrel and a quarter.
Okay.
So I was like, can I get a quarter barrel? And Nathan's response was, I wouldn't do it, but we'll make it work. I can make this work, right? And you've been messing about with this quarter barrel. And I think we've all agreed that it'll become furniture and never be used again. But it was able to do something with it. And then we bought grapes to do a cab. And it was in 2024 when the heat wave hit in October. And our grapes came in from where we bought them a little, not in the greatest condition. And Nathan's like, we can make something out of this. And that was all I needed. I didn't realize how bad that was or how difficult that was or anything like that. But you had to go through a lot to make those work, right?
A lot might be pushing it.
Okay.
It was wine making.
So what did you have to do to make it wine making?
We had to replace the hydration that was lost to the heat mostly, and manage. It's a huge conversation, but we try to make wine pretty
minimally here.
So we tend not to utilize a very deep bag of tricks or additives in the winery. And so one of the reasons that we do that is because for our own fruit that we farm, we really spend a lot of time trying to make sure that all the fruit that gets here is in really great shape. And so when you are forced to deal with fruit that's like maybe not 100% where you know what I mean, which happens, right? It's farming. It's not a perfect. So we just had to dig into some of the black arts to
I think
we added a little water, we added some nutrients to keep the yeast happy, but it's not really that.
I think it was about 100 degrees, and the harvest happened at 3:00 in the afternoon because the harvesting crew was late. So it was not an ideal setup for that delivery.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your winemaking philosophy, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's I don't think it's revolutionary. I mean, I've been here. I've been lucky to have been in the same place making wines from the same vineyards for 20 plus years now, and was very lucky when I first started here that Michael Martella, who was my predecessor, didn't hire me and kind of throw his book at me and go, hey, do this. He said, hey, this is how we've been doing things. I'm interested in kind of like looking at other ways to do things. So I was able to kind of experiment, which isn't a lot of young aspiring winemakers don't get that opportunity. A lot of times they're sort of told what to do. And so kind of Michael was like, hey, this is kind of how we've been doing it. And so it was very collaborative. So I was really lucky in that respect. And so I guess the way that I like to make wine has kind of evolved from that. So we have kind of a underlying philosophy of we think we farm some of the most dramatic sites in California because they're at elevation, on the side of pretty steep mountains, close to the Pacific, perched between the bay, pretty rocky soil. So we like to think that those sites kind of deserve to show themselves rather than kind of myself. So it's kind of a cliche to say, oh, I let the vineyard speak. I mean, everybody loves to say that, but that is kind of where we're going.
Good. Maybe we could try a couple of wines and kind of see how they do differ from nearby.
Yeah, sorry, we've already poured some.
Yeah, and that's fun.
Just real quickly, Fogarty hasn't done a whole lot of custom winemaking historically. But as the winery has evolved, we're making a little bit less wine than we used to. So we're buying fewer grapes. And so one of the things that I wanted to do, we had space in the winery is it's been great to work with people like Ron and Kat and Bud and Anne Marie, so local people, and who treat their vineyards as more than just landscaping. They're passionate about actually growing grapes and making wine. There's a lot of kind of landscape vineyards around here.
There's one next door to us, actually, and I do not know how anything comes out of there. The deer are roaming through it. They don't spray, as far as I can tell. There's nobody ever working there.
Yeah, which is fine. It's just not really what we're interested in.
I know.
So it's been great for us to we don't have a lot of custom clients, but I've loved, I've been working with Bud now for a number of years.
19, we started with you in 19. Yeah.
So, and our relationship has been great. I think we get together, talk about the way he's farming. If there's, he tells me about experience he has. I kind of, say, hey, this is something we've been looking at. And we taste the wines a few times a year, talk about what we think went well, what we can improve upon. And then obviously the relationship with the Dome is newer. So we're pretty excited about developing that. But I just love that there are people who are really passionate about wine and are kind of fostering, this whole Cronin connection is cool. Dwayne bought grapes from Fogarty historically. So I love the idea that there's a little bit of a through line because he's like a kind of a legend in the underground. If you know Dwayne Cronin, like, Santa Cruz Mountain Wine, like that's pretty cool.
And we missed out on all of that, even though it's like in between our houses in the process.
But his wines kind of live on though. So
do you have any?
No.
Not anymore. No.
Chardonnay also, right?
Yeah.
You grew a lot of
Yeah,
Chardonnay.
beautiful Chardonnay.
Yeah, Chardonnay. Yeah.
Powerful, really ripping wines.
Yeah.
There's in the front yard of their house, there's still about 20 or 25 cab vines that are there that have been unpruned for
Oh, they have.
years.
Yeah,
And every
right.
so often I think of talking to the neighbor going, can I do something with these, but then I look at them and I'm like, I don't think I have those pruning skills to try to get them back from
Yeah.
15 years of unpruned.
Yeah, and he had a big cellar underneath his house, and you could, every time you go down there, you could just smell it, basically. It was amazing. Yeah.
Not when you're in the cellar, when
Yeah.
you're living in
Living
the
in the
house up
house.
above.
Oh, because he's making it in the cellar as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
What are some of the differences maybe in how you treat the two vineyards kind of
So this,
in the cellar, I guess, once the grapes come in? Yeah.
It's a little hard to say because the dome wine is so new. I think we're still
Okay.
sort of like,
Yeah. Figuring it out.
yeah,
a little
dipping
bit.
our
Okay.
toe in the pool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there we're sort of making the wine, I'm talking with Ron and Kat about stylistically what, as Ron has said, I think he wants something that's a little more rather than kind of subtlety. So
Yep.
we're trying to kind of, make sure we get wines at optimal ripeness, kind of give a wine that shows kind of the plusher side of Pinot Noir.
Mhm.
And again, we're still learning because we have a barrel from this vintage essentially, and then just a little bit more from 2025. And then with Bud, Bud, we have a much longer track record. And I think, we've played around or talked about picking earlier, picking later. Bud really has a pretty firm idea of kind of where he's going. So that really helps me. We can kind of collaborate. I think now it's kind of, he's got particular blocks in the vineyard, and it's kind of like dialing in the ripeness may not be the same in each block. And so trying to like figure out like, oh, this block, maybe we want to pick a little bit later. This block is fine to pick earlier. So really kind of fine tuning.
And Nathan, that is so important that we can split our harvest, because you got 828, like in 25, we waited 2.5 weeks later before we had the right chemistry that worked and the right, really what I do is I can tell just by tasting the grape, and then I test it, and they're pretty much the numbers that I would expect. So I think as you get more, if you're really involved and you love fruit, you can go out and just taste the fruit, and you know where it's gonna go and where it's not gonna go. So having the option to be able to pick at different times is so critical.
Yeah, it's great. You're working with that one vineyard site and probably just really dialing it in year after year.
every year it's a little bit different again because of the weather, but we've been putting up shade plants and there's even more extra shades that you're putting on some years just to help even the ripeness.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Because you can get a brick and a half on a south exposure, and on the other side, you can get less. So we shade to try to bring the fruit all ripe evenly, and also the way I prune. I prune and I watch the sap, the way the sap moves, and if the sap's not moving, I prune where if the sap's not moving on the cordons further out, I'll cut that cordon back and relay down the cane, because I'm trying to get even flow of the sap to the cluster, so the clusters are more similar in size, instead of having big clusters here and little clusters where you don't have the movement of the sap. And so it's, the only thing we have in Pinot it is the most sensitive grape you could choose, Ron. You picked one of the most.
You tell me now. Thank you.
So when the sun gets hot,
Yeah.
Pinot is very delicate, and that's why we do the shades.
Yep.
We keep the shades up, and I'll put them up just for a few days. You don't want to do them too much because it will affect ripeness. So how you do that has to be strategically done, but I'm doing it just to meet the ripeness at a given time.
We added another block 2 years ago and cut grapes from it this year for the first time. And that had sunburn at the top because we hadn't faced it in the previous one because there was some natural shade from trees in the first big block that we had, and the second block now is exposed in the afternoon. And so we're like, oh, hey, look, now I know what the sunburn looks like on a grape, and have to go fix that as a future round of things. And I think that's what happens is like each year you learn something, and you're like, okay, now I know I have to do this, and when am I going to do that, and do I have the equipment to do it, or how are we setting it up? Or you just gotta, oh, sorry, I get sunburn on those 10, and we'll deal with it next year, or we won't, or we'll forget about it, and then we'll get them again and go, oh, I got to do this now. That process.
And like Nathan says, one thing I think I've learned over the 18 years of the vineyard is I'm starting to really enjoy more of, with the clones we can do this, like the red fruit, is to pick it where it's a little younger, with a little bit of acidity to it, a little youth to it, a little. And it's just nice to mix with like a Pomard or 828, where it's a little riper, and then you're getting the dark fruit. So when you taste the wine, you get this bright fruit, a little acidity at the front end, and then you get into the body and you start getting that rich fruit. Mm-hmm. And we never did that. We were picking things at more close on the same brick level. And now I'm starting to move the bricks a little earlier on one variety and a little later on another variety. And those are things that every vineyard can manage that differently. And that's why our wine will always be different than what Ron's going to do and what Nathan's going to do. So that's the preference. And it's also a lot to do with Anna Marie, what we like, because we know a lot about Sonoma. We've tasted so much wine up there for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And
well, that's ultimately what you're trying to do, is a wine that you like yourself as well. I mean, yes, there's a commercial element to it, but there's also a bit of like, you want to make something you enjoy drinking. And we've been doing this with we signed up to the Santa Cruz Mountains wine club, which, on a monthly basis sends us 4 bottles of Pinot of our competition effectively. And we've been drinking them religiously over that period of time and going, oh, I like that one. Oh, I don't like that one. And just getting taste profiles of nearby vineyards of what do we like that they're making, what do we want. A lot of our conversations around, oh, I like that bottle. I like what we built, the label, the idea, because we had to start from scratch on all this stuff, and you're trying to figure out, well, what do you like and what do you don't like.
I think when I met with you, you had said you liked the David Bruce Pinot Noirs a lot, and those can be kind of a bigger style of Pinot.
You can talk to that more than I can.
I have a big crush on David Bruce wines. Like the Pinot, I think I tasted it was my first Pinot 25 years ago, and I haven't forgotten kind of that flavor. So that kind of influenced that richness. I don't think it's the heavy alcohol. It's just the the taste of it.
Do you put your blocks in different barrels? Do you keep them separate?
yes.
Yeah, we haven't had enough to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So,
We'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. I've been told how much more we have to build. It's where the winemaker vineyard thing comes into play. Going, you need to get more grapes. But then how do you decide at the end?
That's every year. We go through a blending, and that blending is another critical point in the decision of the final product, because sometimes, for example, our 115 might be a little, like now we're driving for a little sooner pick, and if it's a little riper, you get your bright fruit going to blue fruit. So it's you got to keep them separate, and then that determines the blend you do to get the outcome that you want personally.
We haven't had that pleasure yet, because we haven't had enough grapes to keep them separate in the different blocks. Mm-hmm. It's the goal of next year or this year's harvest. So ours has been pretty easy. It was kind of, I think the small barrel, you told us it's time to take it out of the small barrel, and that was the end. We mixed it all together. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Nathan, the Thomas Fogarty estate vineyards make pretty different wines, despite being awfully close to each other.
I mean, that ultimately is the thing that kind of like snapped my head after working here for a brief amount of time, was making wine from these sites that, I'd like to say, if you're better at golf than I am, you can probably hit a golf ball between the different vineyards. But a vineyard just a little bit different exposition. Because we're so close to the San Andreas, the soils will change pretty dramatically. And so you can have 2 blocks or vineyards that are essentially next to each other, but produce wines that are, of a family, but pretty dramatically different. And that was like a real aha moment for me, personally, professionally, just everything. I was just like, wow, this is okay. Now I get it. Like, this is what makes this, to me, ultimately, that's one of the most fascinating things about wine is the way it transmits its identity, where it's from. Obviously, there's other elements to it too, but that really kind of captured my imagination.
How do you then decide what you're going to do with those different vineyards? I get the fact that they taste differently, but like in your mind, what do you do then to say, okay, I want this one to do this or this one to do that?
I guess because, well, I think ultimately we're very lucky when the vineyards were planted here, whether it was intuition or blind luck, they picked very good sites. Most of the sites that were planted here had been cleared. There was no like massive clearing, so they were in theory good potential vineyard sites. And so they turned out to me to be great choices. And so like I love being able to make small bottlings of, wine like this Albaton vineyard, which is this little vineyard on the other side of these cypresses here.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's, we basically farm it by hand. If we get 2 barrels in a great year. But when you taste that wine and you taste the wine from this vineyard right here, like there's unmistakable difference. And to me, that's just fascinating. And I love to tell that story to our wine club members, to people who come here and visit, be like, this is like one of the magical things about wine. It's like you have this transformation of these grapes into something that you kind of taste the similarity, but it's dramatic how different they are. And I just find that fascinating.
Are you making those 2 grapes different or 2?
No,
wines
I mean,
differently?
ideally we try to hold all the controls in the winemaking, so we basically use the same press cycle. The wines are sort of fermented more or less similarly, the same barrels, the same amount of time in wood and in steel. There will be, there's natural differences in the chemistry because certain vineyards kind of develop sugar slower or faster. Certain vineyards, acidity holds more or less. But I mean, ultimately, the idea with a lot of the wines here is to kind of showcase the uniqueness of the site.
Nathan, can we taste some of that Chardonnay?
That's why it's here. Please.
Do you give tasting notes? Have you gone through your...
Oh, no.
That sounds really interesting. Yeah. Okay.
You can see the...
But it is amazing. I mean,
It's a very
wine's
young...
much different styles.
Yes. That's our first ever. And so it's very young. We made as best we could out of what we had.
That's the beauty of the Santa Cruz Mountains, though, is that even though your vineyard's sort of on a map
Yeah.
are close, when I stand in Bud's vineyard and when I stand in your vineyard, they feel differently. They have a different, the surrounding vegetation is slightly different. The age of the vines obviously is different. You know what I mean? So it's amazing. That's the thing about the Santa Cruz Mountains is you travel a very short distance and you are in a distinctly kind of different environment. And that's the beauty of when it relates to wine.
For the Fogarty vineyards, you're much more up here at Skyline, the ridge tops versus
We're
the other 2 vineyards
certainly
that are
higher in
a little
elevation.
further down.
Bud's kind of just below, right? I can't remember what's your elevation.
850.
850.
We're
yeah.
850.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're just below him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Nathan has one challenge once in a while. The fog
yeah.
is you can have beautiful weeks and then the fog, and we get it too. So, I mean, but that's what Pinot loves. It loves that cool fog at night. So if you get these hot days, it's great that, you can cool down the Pinot. And this is the perfect place to grow Pinot Noir because it gets that influence of the fog in the evening.
We were surprised we bought our house. It doesn't have air conditioning. I'm living in California. I just assumed that this would be the case. But where the house is in this area on the mountains, like the atmosphere is set the thermostat to exactly what you would want. It's like 55 degrees at night and 80 degrees during the day. And you don't need it. You just leave the windows open all summer and it's set up well.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
easy to forget how many microclimates there are here too, but we'll be dressed in sweatshirts at home and then go down to the local supermarket where it's like walking into a convection oven.
Or coming up here in shorts and going, that was a mistake.
If you can see a certain number of redwoods, I'm not sure how many it is from your house, you don't need air conditioning. I don't know what what that equation is. But.
We had 25 early planted redwoods, which is where our vineyard is. And there's a helper for our property that the previous owners had employed and we employ as well. And Jesus was like, oh, I'm going to take those down. I planted those 20 years ago. And the guys, but they were like this big around. And that's what's underneath our vineyard and the same guys. So we didn't need air conditioning as a result.
Nathan, this Chardonnay is
delicious,
beautiful.
yeah.
It's 2021 from it's the Alberton Vineyard,
It's called Albatom.
Alberton.
It's a good story there, real quick. So Dr. Fogarty, who just recently passed away,
Lord rest
he's
in
our
peace.
he's our founder and one of the most amazing people I've ever met. He lived an amazing life. Will leave a legacy behind that truly like helping and saving lives, which is pretty amazing. But anyway, he decides to plant this tiny vineyard, and it's small enough that he figures he doesn't need to hire a professional crew. He'll invite his friends and some family. And so I believe it was a Sunday morning. Everyone gathers. And Dr. Fogarty's not there. People are like, oh, we'll just get started. So they knock the vineyard out pretty quickly. He never shows. So the story goes, apparently he decided it was either fishing or a 49ers game. I think I'm leaning towards the latter. But anyway, his neighbor comes by the next day and puts up the sign completely just on his own. And it's all but Tom. So it's all but Tom, just sort of jammed together. And you can see the sign from 1981 is still, it's kind of been, we haven't done any repairs to it. It's still sort of there, but.
Have you replanted the grapes since then?
No, this is all
same ones.
Yeah, original vines from 81. Yeah.
The Pinot vines? Also?
Chardonnay.
Chardonnay.
Had to replant the Pinot vineyard?
So when you drive into the winery, right kind of next to our solar array is the only vineyard we've replanted.
Okay.
So there was a Pinot vineyard at the crown of the property. We call it Windy Hill Vineyard.
Right.
That originally was planted the wrong direction. And we replanted that in 2012. But other than that, all the other vines here are from the original kind of late 70s, early 80s plants.
Okay.
Wait, what's
With,
the wrong direction and what's the right direction?
Well, that's a good question. It depends. Usually I like to plant vineyards as close to north-south in this part of California. It's not 100%, but also that vineyard is so exposed. The way the wind moves through it, it was basically the vines were planted perpendicular to the wind. So the wind just beat the vineyard up. Now the rows are planted sort of with the wind. So the wind still affects the vines, but it's able to sort of move through the vineyard. I mean, you can imagine once
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
you
yeah,
kind
we'll
of get the
see.
tail of the wind.
When you talk about the wind, I can totally understand.
Plus also that's west, so it gives you good distribution of heat on both sides of the rows, which is
This Chardonnay vineyard is also planted east-west, and it actually, I think, works really well for Chardonnay because the fruit on the south side is like crazy ripe, and the fruit on the north side is like unripe. So you get this kind of yin and yang of crazy acidity,
beautiful.
but also really ripe fruit. So I think it works better for white fruit than red fruit. But.
Oh, Nathan, I have a question with Tommy Fogarty gone. Are things going to be different? Or are they going to be the same?
No. With Dr. Fogarty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, his he has 4 children, and so now they're kind of entrusted with running the property. So yeah, I don't think a whole lot will change. He had been sort of less and less involved over the years, on a day-to-day basis as he got older. He kind of stepped away from kind of running all of his medical businesses, the wineries. So it's been kind of planned in the works. So we're very lucky to have the next generation of Fogartys kind of running the show, which is cool.
Bud and Emery, you've never been tempted to go outside your vineyard for any other grapes? No, they did it pretty quick.
No, I think
I have a good reason for that. And I'll answer those questions. Yeah.
yeah, 2 acres is about what I think it's real. That's one thing about being in the wine business. If you're going to do it, you have to take it serious or don't do it. But there's a
Can
there's
you
a
say
point.
that again so that we can?
Yes, is right where we are at about 200 cases. That's what we could produce, in that I can manage it with some just side work on the side, and if you go to the next level, you're then starting to hire people. And Nathan knows this. There's all the different level. You got to start layering more cost, and it's not only the cost. It also takes because we're doing not like a business like Nathan is. We're doing it because we love it too. So it's the size dictates the workload, and I don't. The workload's just about perfect for me.
No kidding.
And it's interesting you say that, because that's what we've kind of gone through now, is to expand. We started with like 450 vines. We added another 120, 130. And I've just realized, like, I'm at that point and I have a full-time job. Kat's a television producer. You're doing other work, right? You're in grass. We're trying to get the TV show out there. Be good. The concept of how much work you can do and what does it take. And what I haven't learned is the schedule of, like, we're booking holiday and going, oh, wait, I can't book holiday that week. We're supposed to do something in the vineyard that week or something. And that's the hard bit of having a job full-time as well as running this, is to say, if something has to happen today, I may or may not be able to do it. How do we get that scheduled, or being ahead of it, going, you have to get the pruning done by a certain time. Have I backtracked and figure out how many Saturdays or Sundays I can do that in the process? And I don't think we could handle another vine in our setup right now. When my initial thought was like, oh, let's go double it again and get more grapes, more vine. But the grape purchase thing was an interesting conversation. It was only because our first harvest was so small. And when you do a custom crush, there's an expectation that you're going to deliver so much. And I remember calling Nathan going, is it wrong for us to go buy other grapes and use our capacity, or is that seen in the wrong instance, or should I do it? And you're like, no, go good at it. We'll make more wine. So I don't know that we'll do it on a regular basis. We haven't done it since, but we may do it again. Depends how nice the Cabernet is this summer.
One I like to pours are 23, because I think it's one of the finest wines. And 23 was an exceptional year for everybody. That it was, as remember, 23 had where we were 53 inches of rain. Then it was cold all the way to July 1st.
I was going to say September 1st.
And then it started.
Top of the hill.
Where July 1st is when you could take off your jacket, and then it was by far the latest harvest we ever did. We didn't harvest until October 7th. And our normal harvest time is 3.5 weeks earlier than that. And all the chemistry came together. The acids, the bricks came in. Everything was just, it was just probably Nathan didn't even have to do much, but it was other people that were growing later, like Cab and other items. Their fruit didn't make it. So it was great for the Santa Cruz Pinot Noir that year. So we should pour that and just, see what.
So are you advocating for 53 inches of rain and cold weather all year here in California?
Well, 20.
Pretty good wines.
24, 25, we had around 38, then 30. So that's average, a little above average. So the last 3 years have been pretty good. And the real challenge was 22. That was the heat. And a lot of people, that was a challenge for a lot of people.
23.
There was frost in the spring of 22 as well.
Yeah. So they got.
Yeah, that's not something we have to think about very much.
We don't get frost where we are. We just don't freeze.
In 22, people who don't get frost got frost.
Got frost,
Yeah.
What year was it? There was a foot of snow.
That was
20.
2 years ago.
23, I think.
There was snow on Skyline. Do you remember?
Me and my kids were
Yeah.
skiing in the
Yeah.
vineyard that year.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it was
It's
knocking
like a
the trees
slalom through
down.
the vines.
It was late February.
Yes, it
the
was
last day of
February, yeah.
February. There was like a couple of feet of snow on Skyline. Yeah. I
It
know.
made the neighborhood look really nice when you're down in the valley and looking up the hill at all the.
Yeah.
That was also the year that we had only lived in our house for about a year and a half and learned all about we needed to build new drainage throughout our whole property. Kicked off a huge amount of work of putting drains in the backyard and the like.
Yeah, that was the
Did you
February
mix the two?
24th.
Did you get a rosé?
Yeah, that was 23, February
23,
24th,
want any?
23, yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
That was, I never forget
yeah.
that year.
We've had dustings of snow in the 20 years I've been up here, but nothing like that storm in 23. I mean,
Thank
it
you.
was-
Cars were getting stuck all along Skyline. I remember because we came up in our four-wheel. And, yeah, it was,
snow was so heavy.
it was, yeah.
When you walked around, you could hear the limbs of trees cracking under the weight.
'Cause it was really wet.
It was kind of
Yeah.
distributed. It was
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
scary.
Russian Ridge lost a whole bunch of trees that year because the snow was so heavy. I remember.
So, Bud, this is your favorite wine of all the ones you made? Or the one you're proudest of?
Actually, since Nathan and we've been working, we've had every year's been phenomenal. But I think this was just
Everything
just
came together.
because the fruit hung so long. It just it gives the complexity of wine of all our vintages that probably one of the top picks.
Yeah,
and now this is
Can
a-
you make us one of those?
Yeah, it's really nice.
Now this is mostly this is 60.
We've got work to do, is what you're saying.
This is 60% Pomard and 20% 828, and only 115 is only 20%. So this is going to be more dark fruit,
Yeah.
and it's 14.1 alcohol,
It's very good.
and it was the acid level was about 3.55, 3.6.
23 was a really interesting vintage because of, as Bud said, how cool it was. 2011 is kind of the vintage at the time that it sort of most reminded me of, but just very late. You know,
Right.
the Labor Day heat wave never came.
Right.
And we just sort of kind of sat there and waited, but it never really. It wasn't super wet. It wasn't a ton of rain, and things just kind of hung and hung and hung. And it was a mostly stellar year especially for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Really magical wines because you still got all the ripe fruit that sort of you expect from California, but you were able to make harvest decisions that weren't affected by these kind of torrid heat waves that we've seen. And that for Pinot Noir especially, it's just
And another long hang year was actually 25, which is last year's harvest. We harvest around the 27th of September, which was 2 weeks later. And everybody was talking, is 25 going to be in the 23? You know, is it going to bear? And you look at everything. What happened is that the acid came in similar, but the bricks were a little lower in 25. So we're probably 3 points less on the bricks at the same acid levels and pH levels. So it's another great year is 2025. It's in the barrel. So we,
And we harvested 2 weeks before you. Because it got cold like the day after we harvested. Bring our grapes up here.
in
And we
25.
and just this past
Yeah.
and we were the only ones here.
Yeah.
And it was, like you guys were sitting around, there was no other grapes here or anything like that. We were early in what we were doing. And part of that is like our planning around, we were talking earlier about the idea around planning around parties for your harvest. And if you're planning a Saturday party with 20 people coming by, you can't move it to the following week and you kind of have to go. And that's when we decided to go.
Well, yeah, but I think it was the right time too,
Yeah.
right? It just shows that what a difference in elevation, not more than what is it, 200 or 300 can really make in a wine year to year.
Well, you've got younger grapes as well. Younger
Yeah,
vines.
exactly right.
Sure, which need
Yeah.
that earlier.
I think
harvest.
I think as the vines mature,
Yeah.
the harvest dates will probably.
I mean, when we started out, we were harvesting in the middle of August. And this
Good.
was maybe like for our 15th.
What we're drinking
with
here
the
was
young
in
for
August.
the young
Yeah.
vines, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were,
Yeah.
yeah.
But this wine here, the 23, you can taste the minerals in it in the main body. That's just, I think that's a characteristic of letting the grapes hang if you can do it, you know, and the weather. That's why you can't plan, and that's why you can't repeat from year to year. Every year is completely different.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's well done. Both of you, or all of you.
Is Dome about 500 feet then elevation?
It ranges quite dramatically throughout our whole backyard. Effectively, we're on a very steep hill in the process, so the top and bottom are very different. And we've got our blocks kind of lined up the hill, and apparently the wrong direction because they're east-west. So we're gonna go back tonight and rip them all out and build north-south in the process. Yeah, yours go around the corner, right? You must have both north-south and east-west. Yeah.
East and south.
Yeah. But because it's a hillside, like we can't see north in the process, which is a fundamental problem with setting up an observatory.
We can see north.
Just barely.
It's just a little light polluted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to. I was just going to ask you about that. So you're high enough that you could have the observatory and the dome name.
Yep.
For the vineyards. But
Yep.
Kat, you want to say a little bit about your observatory?
Yeah, well, that was, like I said, the leading reason why we moved to where we did was to get a place with a good patch of sky. And so, there's a classification for light pollution, which is called the Bortle, and it's unless we're west facing, you can't really get dark skies. But we set up an observatory, and on any given night, you can see like Orion's brilliant, like right now. And I use that kind of vineyard use the observatory that's smack in the center of the vineyard to image all night, which I think helps my images. It's either that or the wine.
And it's a full, there's a big telescope in there. It's a really cool thing because it rotates and it's all computerized where you can you can program in follow Saturn and it'll just keep the telescope and the aperture open and it'll rotate it around. And Kat takes amazing astrophotography things, but it's like, as hobbies go, you can't really do a lot of work in the vineyard in the middle of the night, and you can't do a lot of astrophotography during the middle of the day. So working
Yeah, we
together.
don't crowd each other out.
No, only solar eclipses are the only things that kind of overlap.
Yeah, exactly. In the middle of the day. But that's the inspiration behind the observatory that's on our wine bottle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
really
name.
Good. Label looks really good.
Yes.
One thing I could mention is being able to have one advantage of having a small vineyard is a week before, 10 days before harvest, I'll go through the whole vineyard and drop anything I don't like. Mm-hmm. So we don't have to sort our fruit. It's 100%. Every cluster is looked at, and no one could do that.
Yeah.
So why do I spend so much time out there? It's doing little things like that. That I'm just not happy. And I'll do right after Verizon, I'll do a drop of anything I think that's not going to move through because the color will change. You say, oh, those look pretty, but if you check those individually, and that's one thing I do now, I've learned different rows, how they're different. Mm-hmm. And so I'll even drop stuff that I know is not going to be similar in the chemistry. So that's what you can do with a small vineyard, and you can really customize the quality of the grape. And if there's any damage from birds, we don't have that because we have the nest. But if you did have any damage, you can selectively cut that out. And so when we bring our fruit, it's literally just about perfect.
Yeah. The only thing that gets more attention than Bud's Pinot is Amory's tomatoes.
We have lots of those too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I love working with Bud because he's so fastidious and just constantly trying to dial things in. So.
And what we like about it is I get a text message going, I'm going into the vineyard and doing this. Are you doing the same? I'm like, no, I'm at work, but I'm going to go figure this out.
It's an early warning system.
Exactly. It's like,
I will be tomorrow.
yes, it's something I'll do on Saturday. So, I will say though, it is interesting. Like you can find so many resources now if you go out and look for it. Like I mean, obviously we're doing a podcast. I'm listening to so many different podcasts about, how to grow grapes versus make wine versus drink wine. It's available to you. And online, getting a question where you're like, I don't know about this. You can go do research and find that. And then we live in an area where you can find people who can do these things for you. Like one of the things that I don't have any knowledge of is a spray program.
Oh.
Right. And it's like, I'm learning and I'm researching it, but our spray program currently is we have the same person doing the spraying. Is if Bud's doing it, do it to our vineyard. Right. So I'm using your spray program by default in that process. And you have to rely on someone else to do that because you just don't have the time or the effort to be able to learn that today. But it's on the list of things to learn in the future.
So Ron, that was something that Bud researched for a long time.
Yes.
And found, I can't tell you how many different sources. This was a big issue because we found that we were getting powdery mildew all the time. And then with Nathan's help, we got it right and more or less right. But that was a tough one. That was very tough.
And that's another thing about Pinot. It's
Yeah.
very sensitive to powdery mildew. So
And we've had no issue, knock on wood, in our first couple rounds of that process.
Give that another.
Fingers
Because
crossed.
we're following what you're doing, and
Well-
it's because we're so close that some of this is going to replicable stuff.
well, another thing too is we're all spraying with organic sprays, so you have to spray more often all the time. So it takes a little bit more costs, but it's the product we want at the end.
Yeah, and the Santa Cruz Mountains never seems like the easiest area to farm in the state either. It's high on the list of tough ones.
I think folly is the word that you're.
Not a lot of mechanization. Are you mechanized in any way in what you're doing?
I mean, we use tractors, but,
But you're not harvesting or anything like that, right?
One interesting thing is
We can't even get a tractor in ours, so it's fine.
one interesting thing is just about the different regions of Santa Cruz appellation versus, from Sonoma to Napa to Paso Robles is over the last 10 years, we've spent so much time in all those areas and gone to a lot of vineyards throughout Santa Cruz. Paso Robles is a very tightly knit, openly, everybody works together. If someone's tractor breaks down, someone brings over their tractor. It's like everybody helps each other. And Santa Cruz has a lot of that, but the problem is the everybody's so far apart. It's not like your neighbors, growing grapes. So Santa Cruz is really open when you do communicate and know people. And that's another thing that brought us into the business to want to grow is our friends. Our friends that loved, and Nathan's met some of these people, even one of them, their license plate's called Pinot. And so, I mean, you have to go far to reach these people, but everybody's so open and willing to share information, where I think what I found in Napa Valley years ago is that it's not that way, not negative about Napa. I think there's some places that they're more open, but things are held a little closer to the vest, and some of the things you do there, and that's not true of Santa Cruz. There's a lot of openness.
Because it's corporate, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
a
I think
corporate competition.
I think Woodside in general, like as a kind of like a smaller area too. Like if you just take a look at kind of like our story, we met you. And so there's this like community kind of thread, I think, that pulls people together. And we went Mark Martella, not knowing who he was, at a Woodside event for a photography competition that our son was involved in. And so it's a kind of like, when we moved here, we kind of thought it would be really anonymous and, typical Silicon Valley. And I think the wine kind of the wine culture, subculture here kind of pulls everybody together in a nice community way.
You know, Kat, what's interesting, we pour every year for the Taste of Woodside. We've been doing it, I think, for the last 4 years. And you get to meet a lot of the local people there as well. And we've enjoyed that every year. It's the Rotary Club sponsors it. That's one of our highlights of the year. We enjoy doing that.
Yeah, it's just the people that,
Yeah.
they're serious about the wine. There's not a lot of people there, but it's interesting experience. Another thing about Woodside, Portola Valley is, we do have the Neelys, we do have Rees Winery. So there are some people that are serious about the business. And so that's nice, and having them in the valley, and then Nathan or Fogarty up here. A lot of people don't realize how close they are to actually go to a winery and taste wine. They think, oh, I gotta go to, Sonoma, I gotta go to Napa Valley. They don't understand there's some real good wine right here.
God's ears, bud.
Right here.
Nathan, I think it was about 2 years ago in September. I know it was really hot. You guys held a whole event here for the Santa Cruz Mountains, didn't you?
We hold a lot of events.
Yeah, I remember being at that one. It was super hot. It was right before harvest.
As an event space, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, as we sit here and just, you're looking down at the whole of the bay in every which way. And, other than an incredibly difficult bike ride up Old La Honda Road, it's not difficult to get here.
But Nathan, I think in Santa Cruz, I think we are producing now wines as good as Sonoma. And you started in Sonoma, and I mean, you have to find them, but they're there. And that wasn't the case in the past. You really had to go to Sonoma, to Russian River, to really get great Pinot. And then you have the Central Coast and the Highlands. They're doing some, great work in that area. So we got a lot more product and a lot of good product out there.
Santa Cruz AVA Pinot Noir is amazing. I mean, there's a lot of really good ones, I think.
And it ages better than I think a lot of other areas too.
And we're just facing that now of like, how do you market your brand and what tastings do you get involved with and going through the steps? I mean, Kat's been spending weeks looking at the different ways of going about doing this. We don't have our license yet, so we still have to go get our license before we can sell our stuff. But steps you go through to get this stuff done.
Yeah.
Hey, you gotta edit that part out.
Yeah. Yeah.
We haven't sold any yet. It's process. Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything we've kind of missed or glanced over that anybody?
We're very thankful for the rain we have today.
Yeah.
It's been 6 weeks, and a lot of people don't understand that they think grapevines just grow from bud break to the end of the year. Actually, 50% of the growth, or I'm not saying 50%, but it's a majority of the important part of the growth is actually in the root system. And getting your, just being sure that the soil is properly producing, your proper, your phosphates and your calcium and your everything's balanced. You have to make slight adjustments, and we do that just to help to be sure everything's balanced. Because then you're going to be locking out certain things, and if you lock out certain things, your wine's going to be different. So the soil and the root systems, especially when you're on clay, the roots don't move in the summertime because it's so hard. It's not like sand and low. So all our vines, the most important time is when clay's soft and the roots can actually penetrate and find that stone. And so that's, don't forget the winters. The winters, it's not the time to go home in the vineyard. You have to be aware of what's going on in the vineyard after pruning, or before pruning, after pruning. There's another element of really growing good grapes.
We just got 1,500 pounds of gypsum delivered to the vineyard that we have to go lay over when it gets probably Thursday, Friday this week, when the gap in the rain to try to get it down. And then we've got compost coming in the same guise of hadn't thought about rain for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and now the schedule looks like that. But at the same time, some of us are going skiing next week, so the inbound rain / snow is very exciting because Tahoe wasn't looking very pleasant
Yeah.
to go up next week if it didn't rain.
Where can people find everybody's wines?
You guys want to go first because you're more.
Just on our website, Portola Hills Vineyard, Redmond is the wine.
Yeah, we use Redmond because, well, which is my name, but Halfacker is like a beer. Sounds like a beer.
It does sound like a beer.
Yeah, I know. But it also actually has another meaning. It's of the land. And that's
okay.
what Buddy is, the farmer. So yeah, he's aptly named.
Plant some barley and some malt.
So that's why we use Redmond.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's Portola Hills Vineyard.
But you're in some of the restaurants nearby as well, though.
Yeah, all the Woodside restaurants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 Yeah. The pub, the bakery, the
Bucks.
Bucks, yeah.
And
Roberts, the firehouse.
the firehouse. Yeah. I've purchased your wine. from
You've
there.
got Woodside
Yeah.
locked up.
Yeah.
But next year we're coming after you, though.
And we're at domevineyards.com and Dome Vineyards on Instagram as well.
Come visit. That's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
That's the wonders of a winery versus a vineyard.
I think to truly kind of take in the majesty that is the Santa Cruz Mountains, if you can, it's worth a visit. Put your boots in the vineyard, and because it's pretty unique in California, I think.
Yeah. And especially here with being on the ridgetop here. I mean, amazing views. They get too much better.
We're about 35 minutes south of SFO, so if you're flying in or out of San Francisco, it's a good.
How is your traffic through the tasting room?
Good. I mean, the wine business is not in the greatest place it's ever been in, quite frankly. But yeah, it's good. I mean, we're lucky we have a very kind of consistent and loyal wine club. So we have a very strong core of people who are great customers. But I think, Bud, you alluded to it earlier. There's still a number of people, we are perched above one of the greatest concentrations of wealth and people ever assembled. And there's still a lot of people who think they need to drive to the
Well,
North
there's a lot
Coast.
of traffic up here on weekends, so that's why
We could do a good afternoon here
Yeah.
on Skyline. Go to Alice's for lunch, come here for an afternoon wine taste, and then go to Mountain House for dinner.
Yeah.
And hit the 3 on Skyline. It's worth it.
One thing I wanted to pick up you mentioned is one thing Nathan does is he does wild yeast. And a lot of people that do wine they're scared to death of that. And the wild yeast is the yeast that the grapes develop. So you really reinforce your personal vineyard, and the yeast that Nathan's using is different than ours because it's a natural yeast that is developed. And I noticed because before Nathan did our grapes, we did not have wild yeast, and Nathan actually gave a talk with a bunch of other winemakers in Santa Cruz on the influence of yeast on Pinot Noir, where they took berries out of the same block, and the only thing they did different is they applied different yeast. And I couldn't believe the effect of the yeast onto the grape. So our yeast we don't do that, and Nathan doesn't either. It's just the wild yeast.
Yeah.
It takes a great lab and smart people to be able to manage that.
Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
I think being very detail oriented and very fastidious about cleaning. I'm very religious about tracking temperature of fermentations, and just putting your nose into a fermentation a couple times a day really can tell you a lot about what's going on. So it's very kind of hands-on, touchy-feely stuff. There's not a ton of we don't do a ton of microbiology or microscope work to really kind of back up what we think, but we have a decent amount of experience from doing it for a number of years, we can kind of go, oh, this, you know, I can kind of, oh, the start of this ferment smells a little bit non-Saccharomyces. Let's warm the tank up. Let's get the yeast we want to ferment going. And so a lot of things in this industry are, I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I'm pretty good about learning from things I've screwed up in the past. So if I make a mistake, or if I like kind of think back and go, oh, I should have done A instead of B, you know, that's the best way for me to learn. So
Yeah. Thanks for listening today. It's fun to hear about a couple newer projects happening in Woodside and the Portola Valley alongside established brands like Thomas Fogarty. You can find the Thomas Fogarty wines at fogartywinery.com or on Instagram at Thomas Fogarty Winery. You can find the Dome wines when they're available at domevineyards.com or on Instagram at Dome Vineyards, and the Portola Hills Vineyard and the Redmond Pinot Noir at portolahillsvineyard.com. Please follow the podcast on wherever you're listening and the Instagram at IndieWinePodcast. You can email indiewinepodcast@gmail.com or Instagram with comments, questions, or feedback. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd love if you told a friend or wine lover about it and help spread the word. Rating, reviewing, or donating at patreon.com/IndieWinePodcast helps a lot too. It all goes to offsetting podcast expenses, keeps it ad-free, available for everyone, allows for more episodes, and helps support independent folks. We'll be back soon with another episode. Have a good one.